Yo, what is going on, y'all? It's your boy AT from AT's Barstool, aka Aaron Thomas. Today, we are going to be doing an episode 2 of AT's Barstool, which y'all did like the first podcast. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to this channel. We really appreciate it, and I appreciate it myself. Also, the last video that we made, we did get about 15 likes. Hopefully, we can get up to 20, and hopefully, we can meet up to 50 subscribers by the end of this year. Also, today we are going to be talking about high school basketball in the state of Delaware, and we're going to be covering some more stuff too, other than that, in the near future. But today we're going to be talking about high school basketball, and with that being said, let's get into it. So the first topic that we're going to be talking about in today's video is going to be the St. Mark's versus St. Elizabeth game, which that game was at 7:15 at St. Mark's. It was a really high anticipated game, and it was just, a solid defensive game too for both teams. Also, another thing I want to notice that St. Elizabeth, they are standing at 11-2, which they are looking really impressive, and they've just looked really good year in, year out, despite no matter who graduates on that team. They just look really good. Also, in that game versus St. Mark's, though, they did went on to win 53-45, where Kyan Anthony and Kenneth Hunter both had 15 apiece, while on the other hand, Khalil Kemp and Maxwell Barton had 12 apiece. Also, they did went on to lose that game, sadly. St. Mark's, honestly, I definitely think they look like a top 10 team, and they definitely can compete with any team in the state of Delaware. And despite St. Mark's not playing like the best of the best, they are playing some, really good teams. And I'm not saying St. E's wasn't one of the best of the best, but outside of them, they haven't really played like the best of the best, outside for probably like St. Elizabeth and Dickinson, which they played earlier in the season. Also, I do want to note that this St. Mark's team has a whole bunch of juniors, and this St. Mark's team, they look really good, and they definitely can go far into the playoffs. And yeah, I definitely think they're a top 10 team in the state right now, but they couldn't get it done against St. Elizabeth on Monday. As St. Elizabeth, on the other hand, they struggled in the first half, as they only put up 22 points in the first half, which is not really something we see from this St. Elizabeth team. But they did play a really good game in the second half, and they actually went on to put up 15 points to St. Mark's 7 in that fourth quarter alone. I definitely think that St. Elizabeth has a really young team, and not only that, I think they are the second best team in the state outside of Sanford. And I definitely think that St. Mark's is also a pretty good team who has solid experience. And yeah, I definitely don't really have much to say about them. And on to the next game. Now, the next game we're going to be talking about here is the William Penn versus Odessa Ducks game. This game was probably one of the more hyped up games going into the week, as the Odessa Ducks actually went on to lose this game at home against the Colonials with a final score of 49-57. In that game for William Penn, Aaron Whittaker and Andy Webb both had 16 apiece, where in that game, Aaron Whittaker had 16 points and 4 threes, which he had one of his best shooting nights that game against Odessa. And on the other hand, Andy Webb had a double-double, putting up 16 and 11 and proving that he is one of the better bigs in the state of Delaware as of right now. And also the senior guard, Kendall Riley Garlick, he had a solid game. He had 10 points, and he also had 6 boards and a block. He played a solid game despite not scoring a lot as he usually does, but they still took care of business, got the dub. And for this Odessa team played a pretty good game too, and also Jalen Bencaro put up a solid 20 points with 3 threes in that game. And honestly, they just struggled overall to score as a team. Outside from Jalen, the rest of the team couldn't really score, and that's how William Penn ended up losing that. I mean, not William Penn, Odessa ended up losing that Flight A battle with William Penn. And it was just overall, not really a good scoring game for the Odessa Ducks outside from Jalen Bencaro. Also, to note that in the second quarter, they put up 17 points, which was their best quarter of that whole that whole game for Odessa. It was 17-9. Well, that was the box score. Well, not the box score, but the amount of points they put up in the second quarter alone, which I think that definitely was one of the reasons why Odessa stayed in this game. Outside of that, they got outscored big time in every single quarter outside from the second. And honestly, this Odessa team has a lot of seniors, a lot of experience. This is probably one of the fastest growing programs, which they've only had a basketball team for about 4 years now. And the fact that they're doing this well in 4 years from now is really saying much about this Odessa team. Also, I noted they are definitely, in my opinion, a top 5 team, despite not playing the best competition, but they do have a really good record, and they've also had some quality wins on top of that. Definitely will be a good team or a scary team to play in the playoffs, and same thing with William Penn, despite being 5-5. They just look really scary, and that team could really do something in the playoffs. Now, the next game we're going to talk about here is the John Dickinson Rams and the Odyssey Charter Owls, where in that game it took place at Grail at 4:45 on Wednesday, and that was a non-conference game for Dickinson, which it was a really easy win, with the final score being 80-47. Really lopsided game. I thought it was going to be a lot closer, and yes, I did play in that game, but I barely played. But it's cool. We're not here to talk about me. We're talking about Dickinson. And in that game, Jair Wright put up 31-12, which was a really good performance from him. One of his best performances. In that 31 points, that is definitely his career high ever since he's been a Dickinson Ram. Also, Zamir Crawford in that game put up 20 points, and he did not even make a single free throw, which was the crazy thing about it. And he made a total of 7 layups with 2 threes. In that game, Odyssey didn't look good overall. They couldn't stop Jair, and Isaiah Armour, who was ineligible for pretty much the first half of the whole season, just came back and was approved by the state. And due to the fact that he came back, he had a pretty, mediocre game despite scoring 2 points. He was very productive as he had 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and he had just 2 everything. He even had 2 blocks, one of them being an insane chase down block on Odyssey Charter's guard. Also, another thing to note is Odyssey Charter had 2 guys who had put up 15 points in Aiden Moody, number 11 from Odyssey Charter, who I think is their best player and is really solid, and Markel from Odyssey Charter, who also put up 15 points in that loss. And then their third leading scorer, Andre Purnell, he had a solid game, having 8 points and had a couple good layups. A couple tough buckets, but that just wasn't enough, as the bench ain't do nothing when they got in. Also, another thing to note is Odyssey turned over the ball a lot, and not only that, they just couldn't stop the Twin Towers in the paint, and it was just a really good game from Dickinson. Really good game from us, the team. It was just amazing, and the atmosphere was solid. But Dickinson came out there, went into Grail, and won that game by almost 40, where it came to the point where it was a running clock for the fourth quarter. Okay, and now the next game we're going to talk about here is the Sanford Warriors. Yes, the Sanford School Warriors versus the Howard Wildcats. This game took place at Howard. This was probably one of the best games in this whole week, honestly. I definitely think it was better than William Penn and Odessa when it comes down to just, despite the hype, I definitely think this was like one of the better games. And due to the fact that Howard was up in this game too, which if y'all don't know, Howard was up for majority of the game. They was up by 10, 11 points, which we thought we was going to see a big upset. I watched that game myself. And in that game, Nicholas put up 21 points. He had a really good game, and Bryson played solid too, but it wasn't enough to beat Sanford as Sanford came back from that 10-point deficit. And going into the fourth, they was down 34-44, where Jaden Taylor had a really amazing game, putting up 22 points, 17 boards, and 7 blocks, and showing everybody why he's the number one player in the state of Delaware. Also, another thing to note too is that this game actually went into overtime. And not only that, Sanford ended up winning this game by 9 points, if y'all didn't watch. And Howard did not score at all, which was really surprising in overtime. Because Howard, when it comes down to overtime games and fourth quarters, Howard comes up big. And they definitely play a lot better, too. Another thing to note, Howard is currently sitting at 10-2, and they look really good this year. Same thing with, well, not 10-2, my bad, 11-3, my bad. Sanford, on the other hand, is 12-2 and has the best record in the state of Delaware. They're still the number one team in the state, and Jaden Taylor and Kareem Hunt is really carrying this team big time, such as Trev. But Trevor Webster, he didn't really do much in that game as he struggled and had to sit on the bench for a couple minutes in the third and fourth quarter. Also, another thing to note is Sanford, I definitely think they are a really good team, bunch of seniors, well experienced. And this team is definitely the favorites to go to the chip this year. And I don't see no other team in the state of Delaware beating them. Speaking of Sanford, they do play tonight at 8 p.m. against the Sleazy themselves at the Chase Fieldhouse, which I'm probably going to watch that game live. But if I don't, then I won't give a recap on it in the near future. But with that being said, I definitely do have Sanford being Sally's today, and I have them being by a lot. Also, the next thing to note is that Howard, they have a really good junior class, which we all know about. We know about Nick, we know about Bryson, we know about Ronald. This is a really good class, and I definitely think they could go far in the playoffs. And they also have some other key players such as Dom and Caden, who was really good pieces and can also score the ball really well. With that being said, I definitely do see Howard probably making it back to the state semifinals this year at the Bob. So yeah, and another thing to note too is we are also going to be talking about the top 10 list for the Delaware Basketball Explosion page. If y'all don't know what that is, it is a Delaware page that is ran by a Sally's affiliated coach, supposedly. But this Delaware basketball page supposedly had a top 10 list, and they dropped it earlier this week, where they actually said Sanford, St. E's, Howard, Dover, Appo, Odessa, William Penn, St. George's, St. Mark's, and Cape Henlopen is all top 10 teams. Now, honestly, do I agree with this list? I do agree a little bit on this list. Probably like, some of the top 10, such as Sanford, St. E's, Howard, Dover. I would not be surprised if he has them ranked top 4. But the one thing I do have a problem of is William Penn and Cape Henlopen, which is really questionable, especially with William Penn due to the fact they have 5 losses. Yes, their 5 wins has been really quality wins, and I definitely think they have a really good schedule to where, they have, a top 10 seed possibly in the playoffs. But as of right now, I don't see them as a top 10 team, and I don't think they've been playing as it, despite being teams such as Odessa. And another thing I do have a problem with this list is why is Cape Henlopen in there? Honestly, I know he's trying to give some love to the downstate teams or whatever, but I definitely don't think Cape Henlopen is. Despite being 7-4, their losses were pretty questionable outside from, the Dover loss, but it's Dover and they're one of the better teams and they're coming off a state championship. But Cape Henlopen, though, not really, and I don't think they have the talent either. With Jameson, I don't think they're going to really, be a top 10 team, if not make it far. I definitely think they are a top 15, top 20 type of team. Definitely a playoff team, but I definitely don't see this team as a top 10 team in the state, which I highly disagree on. And If y'all want to know my top 10, I will give it to y'all. Actually, I'll give it to y'all right now. And my top 10, in my opinion, which the first we're going to go 10 through 1 here, is we're going to start off with St. Mark's Spartans at number 10. Yes, I know St. Mark's had some pretty quality wins, but they also had some pretty bad losses too, which they did lose to Cardinal O'Hara, a PA school, getting blown out by 30, which was really crazy, especially due to the fact they had a big win over Dickinson. And I definitely think they are top 10, mainly because of their record and also because they had some quality wins against Dickinson and Dobbins Tech, which are two really good teams that are led by really good players. Also, to note, their other loss, which was the St. East, which we talked about earlier, I definitely think the St. Mark's team is top 10, and I definitely think this Delaware page definitely should have ranked them inside the top 10 for sure. Now, the next team is Apple. Apple has probably been the most surprising team, which I highly agree on Apple being a top 10 team. Yes, they're 11-4, but yes, they lost 4 games, and I know they lost to a 3-10 Sally's team led by RJ and Latrell, who hasn't been doing the best that they can, and they haven't really had the best supporting cast around them too. But Apple, they've really had a really surprising season due to the fact that their best player, Daniel Harvey, went down with a torn ACL and was out for the season uh, before the season even started, which was really unexpected and really sad for this Apple team. And this team has been led by Riley Busby, and Desai Drummond, who's been doing really, really well this year. And they have really surprised people in the state, despite losing their best player and despite losing Caleb Rafa to Middletown, who's having an outstanding season down there. And another thing to note is that this Apple team also has some really quality wins, and their losses haven't really been the worst. I don't see this Apple team. I don't see them being a first round exit this year, and I definitely see this team possibly making it far, especially due to the performances they've been having the last couple of games. And if there's one team in the playoffs that can definitely do some and make a deep run despite not being the top 8 seed, it is definitely Apple, and I definitely have faith in them winning winning some games in the playoffs. The next team I'm gonna be talking about, is gonna be the John Dickinson Rams, which I definitely think they are number 8. And this is not being biased or nothing. I definitely think they should be a top 10 team, if not a top 8 team. And I definitely do see it because they have the second best record in the state of Delaware, or they're tied for the second best record in the state of Delaware with St. Elizabeth. The thing that's holding Dickinson back from having to being a top 5 team is the strength of schedule. Yes, the strength of schedule is a kind of questionable, but they've also had some real quality wins, such as beating DMA 55-46, and also taking down schools such as Tatnall, who actually upsetted Wilmington Friends early on, beating them 48-38. Who's Wilmington Friends? They are a really good team, and they definitely are going to be a playoff team this year. Also, another quality win Dickinson had was against the MOT Charter Mustangs, which, yes, they won by 2. They barely won. But I'm going to say this right now. Dickinson was actually up by 10 plus for most of the game up until that fourth quarter, where they started hitting a lot of shots. And, yeah, it was just a lot of shots made. But this Dickinson team, they are really good. They also did have 2 really bad losses, such as the one against St. Mark's, which they got blown out by 20, and they lost to Howard Wildcats, which they lost by about 5 at Dickinson, which that was a conference matchup. Do I think Dickinson has a chance of making Flight B? Yes, I do. I definitely do, but Howard would have to lose some games, and Dickinson would have to keep on winning in the conference. Now, I would say this. Dickinson, they've been really good, and they also have a really tough matchup against the McCain Highlanders, and that game is going to be a really good game to watch on Monday. It'll be at McCain, and I definitely think Dickinson will win that game too, as they did with Odyssey, who Odyssey came into that game being 8-6, and yes, they did lose that game to McCain. They lost by 15 to McCain, but it was a really, really big win. And Dickinson also got some key players back. And this team's just been led by Zamir Crawford, Jair Wright, and none other than Carlin Hollis. And I definitely see this team going to the playoffs and possibly going far if we keep it up. And yeah, that's really it. I definitely think this Dickinson team can be a playoff contender for sure. Now the next team I'm gonna say is St. George's. Now the St. George's Hawks, I didn't really expect them. I expected them to be a top 15, possibly, top 10, possibly, but barely. But I definitely think this team should be ranked at number 7 in the state of Delaware. And why do I say that is it's because due to the fact that St. George's has been really good. I watched St. George's before. I've seen them play. They've looked amazing. And Joshua Urbita, Emery Womack, they have looked really good. And they have been carrying this St. George's team. And not only that, St. George's got some crazy, and I mean some crazy height and also some crazy talent. And I definitely think they're one of the most dangerous teams going into the state playoffs. And if there's any low seed in the state of playoffs, if there's any low seed, I mean, not low seed, but if there's any non top 5 team I think could go to the state championship outside from Dickinson and St. Mark's, I definitely think St. George's would be one of those teams that could possibly make it to the mob despite being despite being the number 7 team in my books. Now, the next team I will say is Odessa. Odessa Ducks, they're currently 10-3, and they've looked good. They have looked good. Yes, they lost to 5-5 William Penn, like we said earlier. But I'm gonna say this right now: Odessa is gonna be a really good team, and I definitely do think with the senior leadership they have with Jalen Bencaro, Tyshawn Winborn, and Jair Stewart too on that team, I definitely think this team is definitely going to be a legit top 5 team and definitely be a really good team come playoff time. And especially what happened last year when they actually lost in the first round of the playoffs, which they were not expected to lose. They were expected to win, but they ended up losing to the Lawrence Twins in Mount Pleasant and got knocked out, which was really sad and surprising. But I definitely think this Odessa team is definitely going to finish the year off at least 16-4. And I definitely see them being a top 5 seed going into the playoffs and being one of the more dangerous teams coming playoff time. And that's another reason why. Two. Also, number 4. Number 5, my bad. Seaford. Seaford is currently 10-3. Not 10-3, my bad. 10-2. Yes, Seaford is 10-2. They looked pretty good this year. I'm not gonna lie, not pretty good. They actually look really good. You know, as Juan Matthews, and Vincent Evans, they've looked good. And when I say they look good, they've looked good on the court. Both of them, really well as Vincent's averaging about almost 16 points per game, I think 15 right now. And he's just been a really good player, really good point guard for this team. And I definitely think this Seaford team is going to be one of the better downstate teams come playoff time. And there's really not much to say about Seaford is, yeah, there's not really much to say. Yeah, they got upset by early college, but I definitely think this Seaford team should have definitely be a top 4 team in the state and definitely be solid come playoff time. Feel me? Also, the next team we are going to talk about here is the Dover Senators. Yes, the defending state champs. They won last year by 3, I think it was, to Sally's. This Dover team had a lot of guys coming back and was expected to be a top 2 team, if not the best team in the state. But I definitely think they are the number 4 team. And the reason being is Dover, I mean, not number 4, my bad, number 3. And the reason being is that Dover has looked really good, but they also lost some dumb games, which they didn't lose some, but they did lose one really dumb game, which was Saints. It was a 2 versus 3 seed matchup. Uh, a couple weeks ago, and they lost by 2. Apparently, the officiating was bad. That's what some people said it was, but I definitely don't think that was the case. St. East came out big time and won that game, and Dover just came out flat and lost. That I think that's the reason why they lost. And right now, they're currently standing at 11-3, just like most teams are right now. Most of the good teams are right now. But I do see this Dover team with Javon Dennis, um, Norwood, and so on. This team is just loaded, man. I don't know what to say, but this team is a really good team, and I definitely think they could go back to the state championship this year. And yeah, I definitely do see this team winning the Henlopen Conference Championship just like last year. Now, the number 2 team we're going to be talking about here is the St. Elizabeth Vikings. This team has probably one of the better teams, if not a top 3 team in the state of Delaware. Actually, not top 3, they are number 2, I think, in the state of Delaware. And there's really not much to say. They are really good. They've had a bunch of quality wins. They had a big win against Sally's, beating them 31-70, which was just a big win, and it was insane how much they beat them by. Also, they did have a really good win against Dover, beating them 50-48, which I mentioned earlier. And St. East, this team is young, but I'm telling you now, this St. East team is dangerous. They're going to be a playoff team. They may not be the biggest team, but I'm going to say this now. They're going to be a real problem come playoff time. And this will be one of the few teams I'll actually be scared of playing come playoff time, especially due to the fact that they don't even have a real big like that. And next, the number 1 team, we all know who it is. None other than Sanford Warriors. We already know. This team is the best team in the state of Delaware right now. The team led by Jaden Taylor, Trevor Webster, Kareem Hunt. This team is just loaded. Their guards are good. The bigs are good. They're just a really good team, man. And they also have a UD commit on top of that. And it's no surprise that they're 12-2, including multiple quality wins. And I don't think they've lost a single game in the state so far. So that's the thing. And there's really nothing much to say about this Dover team then. They've just been really good. They've been dominant on the boards. They've been dominant on defense. They've been beating really good teams left and right, such as Howard and Dover. They've beaten teams like those. And they're a really good team who is going to be the scariest team come playoff time, if not the best team come playoff time, unless some bad happens. I definitely see this team winning the state championship, and they are definitely the favorites right now to win it all. And other than that, there's really not much to say. This team's just been dominant. That's all I've got to say, man. Next, we are going to be talking about, after that top 10 list, yes, I definitely think my top 10 list is better than Delaware Basketball Explosion's list. But the next topic we are going to be talking about is the top 15 list they made. And yes, the top 15 list they made, which they said guys such as Jaden Taylor, Kenny Hunter Jr., Josh Orbita, Jalen Bencaro, Elijah Johnson-Dixon, John Matthews, Andy Webb, Steven Nixon Jr., Kareem Hart, Elijah Farrington, Darnell Lloyd IV, Riley Busby, Vincent Evans, Amir Crawford, and Bryson Lane. That was their top 15 list that they said that was valid, or they think that was really good. Honestly, I think it was a solid list. This is, we're talking about the same basketball page, and they also listed this earlier this week, talking about as of right now. I definitely kind of agree with him, but I do feel like he is leaving several guys out, which I think, in my opinion, that are doing really, really good this year, especially for their respective teams. No matter how good or how bad they are, I definitely think these guys have been really good and been productive. And with that being said, let's just get into the list. Now, my top 15 list right now, as of right now, my top 15 list in the state of Delaware, or my top 15 players as of right now in the state of Delaware. Actually, before we do that, we're going to be talking about the honorable mentions in the state of Delaware. Guys who could possibly be top 15. If not, they are probably top 20, top 25. And I'm going to go through this real quick. Guys such as Jair Wright from John Dickinson, Uswan Matthews, Kine Alexander, Jasier Robertson, Hamilton from Glasgow. Oh yeah, Kine Alexander from St. Elizabeth, Johns Matthew from Seaford, Jair Wright from Dickinson, Riley Busby from Appo, Robbie Johnson from Sally's, Kareem Hart from Sanford, Andy Webb from William Penn, Nick Bryson from Howard, and Bryson Lane also from Howard. I definitely think that is my honorable mention for guys who could possibly be top 15. They definitely produce to their teams, but I don't think they've produced enough to be a top 15 player. Now, the top 15, my official top 15 players in the state of Delaware, is going to start off at number 15, Kendall Riley Gorlick from William Penn, aka Birdie, which I definitely think he is a really good player, standing at 6'1", and he is a really good point guard who's just been amazing. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I definitely think he is getting overlooked by a lot of these Delaware pages, mainly due to the fact that he's a freshman. I've watched this kid play. He looks legit. He plays really hard, and he's just a really good basketball player. As he put up 19 points in the game that I went to against Sally's, he put up 19 points and got William Penn that big win over Sally's, which I definitely think is quality. Honestly, he is a really good player. Outside of that game, he's been really good in other games such as Dover, as he had an amazing debut, an amazing high school debut against the Dover Senators despite the loss. He had an amazing game where he had several blocks and he had, I think, about 14 points in that game. He played a really good game overall, just know that, and I definitely think he is probably one of the better finishers in the state of Delaware. This is exactly why, and also his defense is really good, especially for a guard, and his perimeter defending is really good, and his interior is really solid. I definitely think he is going to be one of the best players in the state of Delaware, if not a top 5 player by next year or his junior year. Now, the next guy I'm going to be talking about, Vincent Evans from Seaford. I'm going to say this now, I haven't really watched him play in person, but I have watched him play before, watched his film a little bit. He's a really good player, and not only that, he is a big reason why Seaford is a top 5 team, in my opinion. And he's just a really good player, has been really productive. He had several 20-point games this year. He's just been an amazing point guard and just amazing overall as a player. And if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to be a legit prospect in the near future. Now, number 13, this might be a little bit controversial, but it's probably going to be controversial to some of y'all because due to the fact that, you know, he plays for a 3-10 basketball team, well, 3-10 Sally's team, it will be Latrell Wright. I'm going to say this now, he is the only reason, and I mean the only reason why Sally's even won 3 games. I'm going to say this now, yes, it was against Appo. Appo's a top 10 team in my opinion. Middletown, who's about top 15, top 20. And they also took down Smyrna, who's barely top 20, probably barely going to be in the playoffs despite being 6-6, probably 6-7 now, I think. And Latrell was really the only reason why this Sally's team is even winning games outside from RJ. Yes, he's contributed. Has he been inconsistent? Yes, he's been. There's even been one game where he had 0 points, which was against St. Andrews, which I definitely think is the reason why he wasn't ranked inside the top 15 to begin with. But I definitely think he's still a really good player. And when he's on fire, Sally's is most likely going to win. I'm going to say this now. Because when he had 27-24 against Middletown, he was just balling, and the rest of the team was balling out, and they got the overtime win. And he also hit the game-winning layup in that game, which he's also really clutch. Another thing I would say is that the Apple game, he had another good game. Well, not a good game, but he had a solid game. He did have 8-9 points that game. But I'm going to say this now. He was contributing on the defensive side. And then the other game, which was against Smyrna, He had 10 points. Despite having that 10-point game, he did have a couple assists then and there and had 2 steals, which I definitely think Latrell Wright is one of the reasons why Sally's is competing in some of these games, if not winning a couple of these games. Now, the next player I'm going to say at number 12, Elijah Farrington from Milford. This is a guy they said that was top 15. I definitely agree with them on this one. I honestly think, in my personal opinion, I think he is number 12. If not, probably a little bit higher, but I will just keep him at 12 for now. And I think it's safe to say that. Yes, he's been very inconsistent, but he's also been really good for Milford. And it's been one of the best players, including, I think, a 40-point game he had, and also a 27-point game where he had multiple boards. I think about 15, 16, he said. But he's been really good. He's just probably one of the big reasons why Milford's even above 600 or barely above 600. I mean 500 right now. And if I'm being honest, if Milford makes the playoffs, just know it was because of Elijah. And I definitely think Milford is going to be a solid team in the playoffs, just cause. Now, the next guy I'm going to say, number 11, my very own teammate, Zamir Crawford. I'm going to say this. Do I think he should be higher? That's kind of questionable. I'm going to keep him at 11 just to be safe because, if I put him top 10 or something like that, which, y'all going to call me biased or whatever. But I honestly think, do I think he's top 10? I think he could possibly be a top 10 player. At the end of the year, I definitely think he'll be a top 10 player. Also, note that he is 94 points away from 1,000 points, which is crazy to think about now, due to the fact that he's played 5 years at varsity. Mentioned, he was an 8th grader playing varsity his first year at Dickinson. Also, Zamir Crawford, he's been a really good player, averages over 21 points per game, which he's been really impressive, and is coming off a 20-point game against Odyssey. Honestly, Zamir's looked better than ever, and he's also never had a single game where he's put up less than 15 points, which has been really impressive, and that's another thing nobody really knows about. I definitely think they was 100% right about Zamir being top 15. I definitely think he's definitely top 15, and I think he could be a little bit higher if he just, plays a little bit better in his overall game. Honestly, his defense also been pretty incredible too. He's averaged about a steal or so a game, probably his 2 steals now. But he's also been good on the defensive side, and that's why he's a top 10 player. And he's made his teammates look better. He's made Jair look better. He's made pretty much, a couple guys better, despite scoring a lot. Now, let's get into my top 10. The top 10 list. We're going to start off at Vincent Starr. I know this is probably another controversial pick, but I definitely think he's a top 10 player. He can shoot his, off. He's a really good shooter, probably one of the best shooters in the state of Delaware. Averages about 2 threes a game, 2-3 3-pointers a game, and he's also put up a lot of points. And yes, there is some games where he puts up less than 15 due to the fact that he's on a really good Conrad team, which I think Conrad could possibly be a top 10 team if they keep doing what they're doing and get some quality wins. But for now, I don't think Conrad's a top 10, and I think they're top 15, looking outside the top 10 in the near future. Well, they are looking outside top 10, but yeah, you know what I mean. Vinny, he's just been a really good player, defense been solid all season. Scoring wise, he's been the best that he's ever been when it comes down to scoring the ball, which despite Latrell transferring to Conrad, he's definitely stepped up big time and showed some leadership for this Conrad team. Now, the next guy I'm going to say, number 9, is Elijah Proctor Moore from St. Andrews. I honestly think this kid right here, he's one of the most underrated seniors this year, if not one of the better seniors this year. And the reason being is he's just looked amazing. He's looked really good on the court, and he's the real reason why that they beat Sally's. And not only that, he is one of the reasons why that St. Andrews is doing really well this year and doing the best that they've had in the last couple years, which they haven't really been doing well, in my opinion. and for what I've seen. Elijah Practor, his shooting's been solid, his overall scoring's been good, and he also has some pretty good athleticism, or some crazy athleticism. Other than that, his defense has been really good, sound defense, and he's just a good player, man. I've watched this man play for about 2 years now, and he's looked legit. And I definitely think he's a top 10 player in the state of Delaware. Another guy, I'll say, number 8, and that would be Caleb Rafa from Middletown. Middletown, they are a top 15 team. Yes, Middletown's a top 15 team in my opinion. Caleb Rafa, I definitely think he's top 8. And he's looked really good, especially that 27-point game where he hit 7 threes. He looked really good against his former team, and he looked really good overall as he had a really good game against Sally's, where I think he had about 15 in that game, 15, 20. He had a really good game, and they also took down William Penn, which he was a big part of. Despite scoring 10 points, he was playing amazing defense that game. And that was a game where he played really well, and the rest of the team, and guys such as Jalen Murphy and so on, played really well. Also, just to note you too, he's also probably one of the shorter players too. No offense to him, but he is one of the shorter point guards in the state of Delaware, and is definitely balling out. Despite being about 5'10", 5'9", he's been balling out. The next guy I'm gonna say at my number 7 is Kenny Hunter Jr. from St. Elizabeth. Yes, he's been a really good player. This week he had 15 points against St. Mark's, and he's also been a really good player who can shoot the ball well and play defense. I've watched him play last year and watched him play this year. He looks a lot better than last year, and he's a lot more consistent. And I definitely think he is, playing his big role pretty well, despite him not really being a big, more of a forward. But he's been really good, and his finishing's been amazing and all that, as he's putting up almost 14 points per game, I think, about 14, which is really good. And I honestly think he is one of the big reasons why St. Elizabeth is the number 2 team in the state. Now, let's get into number 6. Number 6, Javon Dennis from Dover. I think he's one of the more underrated players too, and I definitely think they missed out on him having to be a top 10 or top 15 player. I definitely think he's a top 10 player at number 6, and I definitely think that he's a really good player with his finishing ability and his energy, and just his overall defense has been amazing. He averages about 16 points per game and is one of the best juniors in the state of Delaware. And I definitely think that, and he's shown in this year, as Dover's currently the number 3 team in the state. Despite losing 2 of their best players, they look really good, and it's mainly because of him. Now, the top 5 list, my top 5 list, my official top 5 list, it is going to start off with Steve Nixon Jr., St. Elizabeth, the best player on St. E's, in my honest opinion. He has crazy athleticism despite being 6 foot, 6'1". He has crazy athleticism, great shooter. He's just have a very good overall game, and I definitely think he is the best player on St. E's, and he's had a dominant season too. And I'm going to say this now. He looks really good. If he's not scoring a lot, his teammates scoring a lot. Just know that. Kyan, Kenneth, Deshaun, they're all scoring if he's not scoring. But I'm going to say this now. He's really good, and if he was on any other team in the state, I think he would average about 20 or 25, in my honest opinion. And I think he's one of the best scorers in the state of Delaware. Number 4, Jalen Ben Carroll. Jalen Ben Carroll, he is, if not, one of the best players in Delaware. Not the best, but he is one of them. And I think he is one of the best guards in Delaware, in my honest opinion. Yes, the number 1 guard in Delaware, in my opinion. He is really good. The Millersville commit has balled out this year, as he's averaging about 18 points per game, and he shot the ball really well, shooting about 2-3 3-pointers a game. Not only that, he's just been playing amazing and out of his mind. And he's looking a lot better than he has the last couple years. I've watched him play myself, and he's really good. I'm telling you, he's a legit player, and he's going to be one of the more dangerous players to guard, especially come playoff time if he's fully healthy. At number 4, and at number three, he should be probably a little bit higher on this, but I definitely think he should be number 3, mainly because of his talent. Honestly, is 3-star recruit Darnell Lloyd. Yes, he is one of the 2 3-star recruits. He's a senior, and he is the second best senior in the state of Delaware behind Jaden. But I definitely think Darnell Lloyd's a really good player. But the only reason why I have him at number 3 instead of number 2 is mainly because due to the fact that I don't really think his skill set is really that good overall from what I've seen. Yes, he is 6'11". Yes, he averages 15 rebounds a game. He averages like 10 and 15 a game. I know that. Yes, he is the reason why St. Andrews is doing so well and is a top 15, if not top 20 team in the state. But I'm going to say this now. I don't think Darnell Lloyd is a top 2 player skill-wise. I only think that he is only like nationally ranked or just a top 2 player in the state from everyone else's perspective due to the fact that he's 6'11". But in my opinion, I think he's number 3. He's legit, but I don't think he's number 2 or number 1. And let's go back to number 2. Actually, not back, but let's just go up to number 2 to Joshua Orbita from St. George's. That is my pick. The 6'7" forward. He can play any position, honestly. I think he can even run the point guard spot if he wanted to. He can shoot. He is crazy athletic, and he can block shots out the moon. I'm going to say this now. Yes, he moves a bit weird, and yes, he dribbles a bit weird, but I'm going to say this now. It works, and he gets to a bucket, and he's just a really good player, and he's been dominant, and is the reason why St. George is a top 10 team in the state now. Joshua Orbita, I'm going to tell you this now. He's a really good player, and he's going to ball out in the next couple years. And I would be really surprised if he doesn't get a single offer by the end of his high school career. Now, the number 1 player, my opinion, this is my top 15 list we're talking about here. My honest opinion, the number 1 player in the state of Delaware, in my honest opinion, the 6'7" power forward / center from Sanford, from committed to the University of Delaware, Jaden Taylor. We talked about him a lot so far today. We talked about him in the recap against Howard. We talked about him in the top 15 list, and we talked about him when I was giving my opinion on the top 10 best teams in the state of Delaware. And it's really obvious, and it's no doubt about it, that he is the number 1 player in the state of Delaware. Yes, I said it, y'all. No doubt about it. And I think nobody else, you can't really put nobody else number 1 besides him this year. He's been dominant. In the game against Howard on Thursday, he showed why he was the number 1 player. 22 points, 17 rebounds, 7 blocks. You cannot deny that. Not only that though, but he carried his team to a comeback win. They was down by 10 points for most of the game. Second quarter all the way up to like the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth. And guess what? They took that game into overtime and won that game by 9 points. Yes, 9 points. The score was 9-0. Did not allow a single point. And if that game did not deny it enough, they go watch him play against Sally's today at 8 p.m. at the Chase Fieldhouse. He played today. Go watch him if you don't think he's number 1 still in the state of Delaware. And with that being said, y'all, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope y'all enjoy. Follow my Instagram at @Barstool. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. And my next video will be next week, February 8th, on a Saturday, once again at 7 p.m. Also, just to let y'all know, y'all can tune in today, and not tune in today, but tune in next week in my next video. And also give me some suggestions. Slide up on my DMs, slide up on my Instagram, and also give me some more recaps that y'all want me to do, and give me more games you want me to talk about on this channel. But with that being said, thank you guys for joining AT's Barstool, and we will be doing another video February 8th, 7 p.m. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow my IG account at AT's Barstool. Link will be in the bio. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see y'all next week. Peace.